So we have one episode to go before Steins Gate 0 wraps up, and it honestly feels very doable. I don't think next week's episode is going to feel rushed. There's only two main things that actually have to be done, or at least appear to be, because we know how this is all going to end. We've seen the first Steins Gate. We know once Mayuri convinces Okabe to try again, he will then get a message from his future self. Now we know how he's getting the message from his future self, through Daru's new kind of messaging-based time travel system. Instead of D-mail, it's going to be through this other messaging system. So now we have all the groundwork laid that as long as deleting this AI actually proves to work, this should, in theory, give them the ability to stop this time travel mind trickery that's been going on. And I'm quite excited to see this, because this episode, what I like is how there's a lot of mirrors to the end stages of the first series, but it still feels completely different. Steins Gate 0 is definitely its own series. Even though it shares similarities, it's its own story doing things differently. But if we remember near the end of the first Steins Gate, Kurisu really had to give Okabe a good push. He was ready to give up. Even when he was Kyoma, he still was trying to kind of keep it together. And this time, Kurisu may be dead, but the AI version of her is still around, and it's kind of that final push, the push to succeed. What I like is how in the early stages of this series, I was always kind of speculating, like, should we consider this to be a real person? Like, okay, yeah, it's an AI, we know it's an AI, but it's still the exact memories and replica of Kurisu at that moment when the memories were taken. And throughout this 22 episodes that we have currently, it's clear as day, like, I wouldn't view Amadeus as anything other than a person. Even though trapped in a computer, it still feels like a person. There was experiences there. It's literally Kurisu, just not in a human body. Of course, Okabe's not going to want to delete that. Like, even though, of course, logically, there's Steins Gate. There's a world line where a human version of her, as well as Mayuri, get to live. But still, this version can't exist, and what I really like is how she recognizes this, like, man, my program actually succeeded if you're looking at me as a human, but still, of course, there is something there. There is a bond, so not wanting to ruin that, I thought was such an emotionally gripping moment. I think the perfect kind of, like, second to last episode here, because really trying to make you feel something, and I think most people will probably feel something because we had grown to know this version of Kurisu for so long. The moments leading up to that, you know, having her say, Maho, you will surpass me someday, something that Maho's character has always felt like she can't be Kurisu, but she still tried to be something for this group because Kurisu's dead, she has to be the next best thing. So I thought it was a nice kind of wrap-up moment. Of course, she's not going to remember this because we are switching what appears to be world lines. So it's nice to see that, but it's just this nice bow to tie up her arc overall, and you feel it's this bittersweet moment. You know Kurisu will come back in the flesh, but this version is not going to exist. But as long as someone remembers her, she's not totally erased from history, and Okabe can remember her, which I think is a really nice moment. And just this episode, I thought, it started off very nice. I really like how, we're seeing Kyoma, and just the characters are like, what the hell's going on? Daru saying, like, is he back to being delusional? Because that's who he was. He was someone who always made up these crazy, wild speculations, and no matter how crazy he was the only one to basically see solutions that others couldn't. So when he's like kind of giving up but then kind of rises back to the occasion, it feels so reminiscent of the first series in terms of how he would present himself as the mad scientist but then have his moments isolated away, kind of like what the hell's going on, and then you would have characters like Kurisu help pick him back up. It was very reminiscent to the old series, but it didn't just feel like something trying to be nostalgic, but rather important for this scene. And I really like just seeing how, like, because, like, the biggest question is, of course, if we can overcome the time travel machine getting destroyed, well, then that solves one part of the issue. Mayuri can convince herself in the past to convince Okabe to try again. Once that happens, he then gets the message. But how would he get the message? Because if they use it through D-mail, that's going to get traced, and that will lead to Mayuri's death. So they can't use that. But it makes sense that Daru could implement that same tech to a separate messaging app that really only he has. It doesn't feel like a cheap kind of cop-out of how they're going to overcome it. It's like, okay, that makes sense. The machine was already built for one messaging system. It makes sense that Daru in the background would kind of work on this to try to see, like, maybe we can send these same types of messages, but through a different program. That makes a whole lot of sense. So I'm excited to see how next week is going to go, how it's going to function, how the pacing is going to feel. I don't think it's going to feel rushed, despite there is a lot to do next week, but we know the overall outcome. Like, there's only two big moments that happen. Well, I guess there's three big moments. Stop the time travel machine from getting destroyed, send Mayuri to the past, and then have Okabe record that message, and then obviously I think how it's going to end is we're going to see Okabe get that message and then probably whatever the conclusion for this world line is. I think that's going to be a really good ending, and I'm really excited to see how that OVA is going to tie into the series, if it's going to be like an alternative take or what the hell they're going to do with it. Nonetheless, I'm very excited. But this episode, I feel like it really hit that emotional stride that I think Steins Gate in the first series was really good at, where near the end of the series, like, you were really having these moments that were really trying to pull in your heartstrings, and I think it succeeded more often than not, which is what I think this episode did. I'm sure there's going to be some people saying, oh, was this episode needed? She's just an AI. Things of that nature. I think, yes, it's been very much proven that even though she is in a phone, this is a real relationship that was built, and it's obvious why Okabe was scared of letting it go, but it also does show just how damn good Kurisu is as a scientist, that she made something that feels so damn human. This episode was great. Sure, there were some dips in some of the presentation. There was a lot of kind of like medium to close-up shots that were like, it needs some touching up, right? But that stuff always gets touched up, or more often than not gets touched up in the Blu-ray and DVD release. But the directing, I think, it just mirrored so much of that first series, but remained to have a new fresh coat of paint at the same time that just made me happy. The music direction was on point, very kind of like blasting it in your face in the beginning, but then over the course of the episode started to seep into the background, so it wasn't so noticeable, but it really elevated those scenes at an emotional level. And Okabe's voice actor, especially Kurisu's voice actress, really stole the show. There was a lot of range there. And I just leave this episode kind of with a bittersweet feeling, but very optimistic for the future of this world line. Let me know what you're feeling down in that comment section below. Your favorite moment, what did you think? Let me know, and be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also be sure to subscribe to the channel if you happen to be new. But until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.